Hi, and welcome back to PatientRx. I'm Jessica Krauser.
And I'm Tina Valbh.
And we're still at Assembia Specialty Pharmacy 2025 conference, but now we have a special guest with us. Hello, our special guest, Emily.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Hi, Emily.
Emily, why don't you quickly introduce yourself and we'll get started.
Sure. Yep, my name is Emily Campbell. I am a director of learning and development at 2 Labs in Columbus, Ohio.
Yay. Well, I'm so glad that you got to come. I can't talk. See, we had this conversation just a little bit ago that I'm having issues with my brain to mouth function, but that's okay. Parkinson's will do that to you. So today we're talking to Emily. I actually did not prep Tina at all for a reason. So I know our listeners know this, but we're hopefully going to have new listeners as we go along. So I have Parkinson's. Tina has breast cancer that she's been, dealing with for, I don't say hate dealing with, fighting. What do you like to say? Managing. Okay.
Yeah.
And this is actually important that I do want to point out when you're talking to any different patient, there are different languages and words that mesh well and don't mesh well.
Yeah. This is definitely a sidebar conversation, but I don't know if I use the word survivor quite yet.
You've said something about it before.
Yeah. And I'm managing my cancer.
And I'm not fighting Parkinson's. I'm living with it. So,
okay.
But we'll talk about that more. Anyways, so with that, Emily works on our patient service or patient, I can't even think. What
patient services?
What do I do?
What do you do, Emily? You tell us. How's that?
But it's really exciting, the new thing that they're implementing. And basically, I mean, obviously it means something for the pharma company, but the way we look at it is, okay, how this is really going to benefit us, and you'll see why. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what you're doing?
Yes. So I lead our learning and development team within 2 Labs. Today, we work with different pharma manufacturers, hub vendors, patient service teams, building their training programs. So you may be wondering, don't they have training, right?
I'm like, don't they already?
Right, and they do, right? They have amazing onboarding programs. They have fantastic disease education, product education. But where we find, we partner best with these manufacturers, hub vendors, is to build intentional role-based training program for different roles like case managers, nurse educators, reimbursement roles, basically the people behind these support programs.
So I'll stop you there for a second because now I have a lot of questions.
I know. She would. I was like, this is going to be so good.
So it's role-specific education versus a generalized
one size fits all.
Yeah, versus generalized.
Yeah.
Which is excellent. That's what's missing. But then more questions. Sorry, Emily. Does that mean that you are building these role-specific educations for the manufacturer to then go deliver to, say, a specialty pharmacy or a hub or any of the stakeholders?
Yeah, so it's kind of all encompassing. So let me give you a little bit of my background real quick because it applies directly. So prior to 2 Labs, I've been there 3 years. I spent 7 years at Cover My Meds, which is more in the reimbursement space. I wore the headset. I was a case manager type role. I talked to healthcare providers, payers, pharmacies, patients about the reimbursement prior authorization process. So I now get to build programs for people who are doing the same thing, right? Their main role is to educate healthcare providers, educate patients on what is really going on, which I heard you all talking in a prior podcast about education and people not having awareness or knowledge of what's going on behind the scenes, or really not having a ton of information on their disease state in general. And a lot of the curriculum that we build is not only, okay, how do you do your workflow? How do you work in the system and make sure forms are in and patients are being called, but how do you build relationships with patients so that they're accepting of the education you can provide related to the disease state and the product that these manufacturers have to offer?
So I have definitely a lot to say. Patient education is near and dear to my heart. Not just as a pharmacist who's implemented that and counseled a lot of patients, but really as the patient myself, where I felt the education was subpar. And the people delivering the education, that was the twist to the story, where had they been better prepared, maybe more empathetic, a little bit more compassion, and asked the right questions of me, like meeting me where I was at in my journey. And I remember the first time I got a call to education on my oral oncolytic. And I felt like it was just scripted. They weren't talking to me or understood where I have been to get there. And so these role specific education,
and following a script and all that.
Yeah, it's so important. I do feel like providers it's very generalized education, and it's a one size fits all, and we're not empowering the people that are delivering the education to really look at the situation, look at the patient. Yeah. So from that perspective, Emily, what is the type of content you're building so that they do build the relationship with the patient? And more importantly, how do you change the patient's mindset and behaviors as they're living with certain diseases?
Yeah. You said so many great things there. I think the main why behind what we do and building this intentional training program, all the content, is so that employees, team members, they feel more confident and competent, right? They feel confident talking to patients and prescribers. It's not just reading off a script or quickly finding their SOP, right, to do the right next action. They're building relationships with patients, giving them the education that they need, directing them to a resource maybe that are available to them in these programs. So one big topic that we love to include is called motivational interviewing. So this is a common, healthcare concept or soft skill or communication strategy. Started in the psychology space around behavior change, addiction management. We kind of shift the concepts to this patient-centered conversation. These team members, case managers, nurses, they don't direct care, right? They don't provide specific direction on, medical decisions, but they can provide education on, again, the disease state, right? Helping patients understand the situation that they may be in, or using motivational interviewing to elicit information, right? So using open-ended questions instead of just the checkbox yes and no. Using affirmation when a patient maybe is willing to share a little bit more about their journey and saying, thank you for sharing that with me. Like, you are strong in this, journey that you're on, and I'm so grateful you shared that with me. Here's what I can do to help you. And two, that leads to empowerment, which I know you both feel strongly about as well. Thinking of myself as a patient, actually, I'll tell a quick story. My grandfather, this was probably 10 years ago. He randomly told me that he stopped taking his diabetes medication because he went to pick it up from the local medicine shop and it was more expensive than he could afford. So he just stopped taking it, abandoned therapy, right? Which I'm sure so many patients out there, right? That's the situation they run into. They have no idea why the cost changed or why they can't pick it up or it's not available. And I remember early experience at Cover My Meds, I was like, maybe it's a PA issue or something with his Medicare that he doesn't understand.
Right.
And he didn't feel empowered or equipped to have the information and education to ask those questions. So I always use that and tell that story in the training programs we build and when I facilitate in front of folks, because we are helping patients just like that, right? Who don't understand, who don't know what questions to even ask. They may not trust their doctor or feel like they can. So, we help employees be that additional advocate for a patient.
Do you ever, because we were just talking about this before, of like the social listening, of like, when I post something on my Parkinson's podcast and for patients, they send me all these comments of like, I never talked about that with anybody, or nobody's ever asked me that, or I never thought of that as like a connecting point or something. So we were talking around, are there things that patients aren't even bringing up because, like you said, with your grandfather, like a situation like that, in these trainings, or just, I guess, from maybe a pharma perspective in general, is anybody even trying to educate themselves by doing types of like social listening just to see like what patients are talking about to maybe help them with their own talking points or questions? Do you know, is that a thing?
Yeah. So from my experience working with some manufacturers, they'll have like patient testimonials or stories, right? That they have on their websites. Sometimes too, like we did a myasthenia gravis program for a manufacturer, and I just YouTubed a ton of patients, right? And stories that they told.
Yeah.
We weave that
That's
into
brilliant.
Yeah.
By the way,
That's what I'm
it's
saying.
brilliant.
Thanks.
Emily.
Yeah. Thank you. But weaving that in because it's important for everybody who picks up the phone, right? And some of these conversations these team members have are through Zoom, which is such a great way to connect. They do, some roles get to meet in person.
By manufacturer, like that they choose to do that? Okay.
And role type, yeah.
Okay.
Typically the like clinical staff, so like a nurse educator, nurse case manager, sometimes they can be on site or through Zoom. But a lot of these, employees are just picking up a phone, right? And we try to remind them every call, every PA, every question, there's a human behind it, right? It's not just another number or another person. You need to quickly check your tasks and move on to the next. So we embed some of those videos and patient testimonials, stories. We'll even make some up based on our own research just to really tie it together of the who behind the work that you're doing.
So are these educational series, is it also for clinicians? Or is it mostly for operational staff, like a reimbursement, like a verification person or a case manager? How does this stretch into clinical personnel?
So the programs we design and all the curriculum we build are for the operational staff. So at the manufacturer or the hub vendor. But some of these roles do offer education to HCPs as well. So they can offer, and we'll build training material around that, right? So they'll have specific, talking points and resources they can offer providers for reimbursement, for enrollment into these programs, for financial assistance, like copay programs, patient assistance foundations, alternative funding, et cetera. So that's where I think the HCP connection is these team members can educate and offer information to providers to better support their patients. But the manufacturer typically is the one creating like an MSL type role. Like those types of roles are the ones at the manufacturer doing the direct HCP education.
So and that's why Emily came this year to Asembia. This is her first one. We were just talking about
You're a newbie.
Yeah.
we were just talking about how many times like we've been here. We there should be like a newbie sticker or something.
Yeah.
My first Asembia.
A big what are the Disney buttons?
Yes, definitely. It sounds like you're doing a lot of good things that's definitely filling a gap in the market to help
I
patients.
didn't even know. I mean, actually, I kind of knew there was one because we've talked about the support when we get with phone calls, but I didn't really think about it in a training standpoint way. So this is what I love hearing. It's like how is a gap being filled for patient benefit?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I recently read a statistic that around 12% of the population is proficient in healthcare understanding.
Oh yeah,
which leaves a massive gap right, of people who need.
Emily, I sit in this chair on this podcast, and she'll say stuff, and I'm like, okay, I know I'm in the healthcare pharma industry, but as a marketer, I don't understand a lot of what you just said. Yep. So you got to bring that back a little. Yeah. Well, Emily, thank you so much for coming. We really appreciate it. This has been such a great learning. Like I said, I didn't want to tell Tina because I knew she'd just be jazzed, like as soon as you said what you were doing. Yeah. So thank you for coming and enjoy your first Asembia.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate the conversation.
Thank you.
So with that, we will see you guys next time. And again, we'll still be at Asembia.
Still be at Asembia.
Thanks for tuning in.
Thank you. Bye-bye.